We got stress cause we're striving, surviving, keep on moving to improving, rearranging. The whole world's changing, pandemic, systemic, rule making, rule breaking, disagreeing, no, we're fighting or fleeing. Got a mind.
Hey, the stress divides me.
The stress divides me.
Wanna mind the gap, hey.
Wanna mind the gap, hey.
So why don't you help me?
We got stress conditioned by tradition, position, and religion. Do we listen or frozen in fiction? So division. Welcome to Minding the Gap podcast, brought to you by Behavioral Sciences of Alabama. I'm Paul Bakke, licensed counselor, and alongside in the video box, Dr. David Barnhart.
And how do you get out of this box, man? I'm stuck in this box. How do we get out of this box?
Well,
I know.
When you do video podcasts, we're just going to be in a box.
You're going to be in a box? Okay.
So
I was thinking maybe it was a metaphor for taking a vaccination. That might get us out of a box.
That might. Hopefully it does.
Yeah. That have anything to do with peer pressure, you think?
It may be something. Maybe it does. Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about peer pressure and the whole idea of how culture teaches us how to feel as a group. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's hard to think about how culture teaches us, but it starts in the family situation. Or we don't naturally experience the myriad of emotions that we have. We're trained, we're taught how to feel. If we just take a basic kind of thing that may be easy to understand from a conditioning standpoint, how something is learned. You're walking along a sidewalk in your neighborhood with a 2-year-old child toddling along beside you. And you walk up along this chain link fence, and a large dog comes up and jumps on the fence and barks really loud. Now, a really loud noise is an unconditioned stimulus. In other words, we don't have to learn to respond to that. It's unconditioned, it's wired into us. So loud noise, the brain does threat detection. So the natural tendency is to back off or get behind mother's leg or dad's leg, as the case may be. And then the parent goes, "Oh, sweetie, did that big dog scare you?" Right? And there we go. So that's the beginning of people interpreting based on our reactions, how we feel. Now you can see where this might go. Now we got a conditioned response, a learned response, fear associated with big dog scare you. So you can see where it goes. But so then the kid begins to have difficulty with dogs of all sizes because we generalize our learning, right? And so that's a very simple, kind of straightforward example, and it gets more subtle and diverse.
Sure. And so how would a parent condition a child to disconnect from that fear when in the presence of a dog?
Well, it would be a matter of exposure.
Yeah. So the parent might go, see, this dog is okay, and petting the dog, and the child seeing that this dog is friendly and not a threat.
It was saying hello.
And so there's this social, I trust mom. I want to do what mom says. I know she's not going to hurt me because I've got all this evidence of that. And so the dog's not hurting her. So maybe I can come out and reach my hand out, and right. And so there you have an example of this social influence based on the family. Like, see, this is you're the by yourself. You might avoid dogs forever, but when a person that I trust has a different feeling that's connected with that, maybe I can feel okay with that too.
So modeling is definitely one of those things. Alternatively, a parent could just walk on with the child and not respond at all. And again, you have the threat detection, but there's not any interpretation that goes any particular way. It's just a loud noise.
Yeah, and the other natural fear that the humans have is abandonment. So if a child is afraid to be alone, doesn't want to be alone, and want to be abandoned, it's a natural thing that then it would make sense that if the threat of being alone is there, then that would influence a child to think and do certain things. And that learned in the family, and then in friendships, and people don't want to be rejected, abandoned by their peers. And so I would maybe normally not do something by myself, but when other people are doing this, there's this peer pressure because you can be accepted if you do these kinds of things, and other people are doing it and they're acceptable. And so there's this social influence that are happening that's based on fear of rejection or abandonment.
Right. And so the basic state is separation anxiety, and you see it in all kinds of animals. Little puppies, when the mama walks away.
My dog has got that big time.
Yes.
It's not like being alone.
Yes. So being a social animal, we do prefer, we feel better, we're safer,
Yeah.
So
we have this drive to fit in.
Yes.
And that becomes conditioned as well. So it's important to select groups that supports our goals and values. That's why parents get concerned with, the decision of who our children, elects to hang around with, because there is a real power in influence, social influence. You just be around more people you're around, that are doing the thing that's against the family values, the more chance they're going to do those things.
A lot of people, teenagers certainly, and younger children, don't really understand how peer pressure isn't always a direct invitation to do something risky.
Right. Yeah. And a child might say, oh, they're not putting any pressure on me to do this. They're not asking me to do this.
Right.
They don't have to.
No, they don't. If an adult walks into an adult group and everybody's sitting around smoking, just say, I mean, that would be usually a rare occurrence today, but you get the idea. So if an adult goes into a group where people are doing something, the same thing, drinking and enjoying whatever the social time, people in AA have a saying, and they say that if you hang around a barbershop long enough, you'll get a haircut. So it's the same idea. If you're hanging around a group that does certain things, chances increase that will have an influence on you. Even in the old days, when they had in colleges where they had a separate dormitory for certain majors, like You have an engineering dorm, so everybody in the dorm is an engineer. Well, that's not, doesn't work out to be perfectly true. So you could be a psychology major and be moved into the engineering dorm because there wasn't room somewhere else because the world is overrun with psychology majors. And so now you're living with engineers. The probability is that sometime in the near future, you're going to become an engineer. So it can even influence our cultural choice. It's a good thing I didn't get stuck in an engineering dorm.
It is a good thing. Not that there's anything wrong with engineers.
Oh, absolutely not.
I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Me too.
I was never in danger of being influenced to be an engineer. I promise you that. That was not going to happen.
Yeah.
So anyway, so part of this process is really understanding the power of social influence, and it's just part of it's part of what's helped society survive.
Yes.
Group, tribes had to band together and play their part in order to survive. And if someone wasn't, then they were out. Because it was detrimental to the group. So this social influence and peer pressure that we're talking about goes way, 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 way back, and it's been repeated over time. And now we have the ability to study that history, understand the power that's connected to the influence based on how we've been raised by our families, based on the norms of our culture. And we have a chance to decide and use our minds in the gap when we're faced with situations to decide how we want to respond to things, how we want to think about things, and being able to evaluate whether those norms that we've learned are helpful or not. And sometimes we get into this idea where this is right, this is wrong. And it's really more about a value. It's not really about right or wrong in a rational way. It's really about this is kind of a value. And here's an example. So I was at church the other day, and the pastor did not tell everyone to stand up during one of the songs. And normally, when there's songs, we stand up. And so everybody was sitting down, and I was thinking, should I stand up? And then I thought, well, I'm kind of comfortable sitting, so I'm okay. And then someone in front of me stood up. What do you think I did?
Stood up.
I stood up. Okay. Would it have been wrong for me to continue to sit down?
Would not have been
rationally
wrong.
No. There's nothing really wrong with sitting down, But in that context, we kind of associate those kinds of things with, well, that's right, that's the wrong way to do it, and you have all kinds of controversies in churches when somebody decides they're going to change up the service pattern or something, and some people, that's not right.
It's not right. No, it's not right.
The real issue is they're not comfortable with it, not used to it. They've associated this norm that we've always done with right and wrong. And so the question becomes, I can use my mind to determine, is this the way we've done things? Or is it right or wrong? Or is it just a different value that's okay?
I like this, use the term context, because there's a part of the brain, the hippocampus, as I understand it. The hippocampus really contextualizes. It helps us to be aware of the context that we're in. And it's interesting if you look at the social dynamics of circumstances like you're talking about. Sometimes they're very subtle kinds of things, like you're hanging out with one group and let's say a group of your college friends, and then you move from that group to a group of people have a who have a less formal education, and they speak with a different accent, and the chances are that you will tailor automatically. You don't have to really think about it, but you find yourself doing it, tailoring your conversation with the people that you're hanging out with. And I may have made a poor selection of groups, but well, you could, men would certainly understand going into a locker room, and people have used this phrase locker room talk to
just to start influence, to start
yeah
cussing and saying things that you wouldn't say
yes
in another group.
like in church. You wouldn't say those things.
Wouldn't say those things in church. You say in the locker room, it's somehow it's okay. And so again, the question becomes, is this okay for me to do this in this context? Or, is it consistent with my values? Is it right or wrong? That's usually not a real good question. Is it right or wrong? Because it is a value, and it gets confused with that. The national anthem is a good example too. When I grew up, we stood for I remember standing in right field my freshman year in college, and I was at the national anthem, and just really remembering this very well, that just kind of just be so thankful that we lived in a country where we're free. And then I could play baseball, in college. I mean, it was just like, this is just so much gratitude, so this tradition really kind of got instilled in me that, this is what we do. And this is, and then when people started protesting and sitting out and then kneeling and all that, it felt wrong. It felt wrong to me to do that. It wasn't really wrong. We haven't really been standing for the national anthem and doing that really for that long. If you look at the history of it, it just became a tradition. And then, and so if someone wants to express themselves in a different way, is that wrong, or is that just different from my value? And so I had this visceral feeling and reaction to when that first started, and which I think and a lot of people still hang on to. They think it's wrong. There's a wrong thing to do. You have to stand up. So it was a real, it kind of shook me up in terms of being able to decide, is this a value that's important to me? Does it have to be important to everybody else? Is there another way to express pride in the country, and by protesting or by making some kind of gesture? The question was for me to decide, but not really based on what's right and wrong.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you have this social awareness, this emotional self-awareness is a good name for it. And I think that being emotionally self-aware, that allows us to be in a position where we can select based on how we want to live our lives, what we believe our values, we want our values to be. We can make decisions about how we are going to think in response to these circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of things that are going on now that are dividing us socially into our groups. One group believes this, and that's it. The other group believes this, and we're not going to really understand the other person's side of it and be influenced by people that we may put, in an other category, those people, as if they're not human and important as well. So social influence can really perpetuate that based on your group. And so the question becomes always to me is, let me really be aware of how this feels, how I think about this, how I've learned this, and decide, what do I need to do next that helps? Would it be helpful for me to go on social media and criticize people that I disagree with? I don't think it would be helpful for me to do that. It would probably make me more upset. And I don't think I would really be an influencing person to the opposing view. I might get some support from my people who believe I do.
Yes.
That's what I want.
That'll reinforce it. Yes.
But I'm not sure if that's for me. That's not, and that's really kind of what's going on today. We have these avenues to try to influence others, and that we didn't, before social media happened, it was, you talk to your people at school or your neighbors and people at church about things, and your opinion just stayed there. Might have spread out a little bit, but now you can reach out and, globally find people to get a response from.
Yes. Yes.
So again, the question becomes, based on my awareness of my social influence, based on my values, how do I stop and use my mind to decide how to respond, rather than just, it's just the way it is.
Mhm.
It's just the way it's always been. My people believe this,
Right.
and they're right.
Well, it's part of, we need to pay attention to part of what you said there about, you could voice something that would get, you could voice a criticism that would get a negative response from whoever it is you're criticizing. So that can evoke a lot of negativity, and even reinforce the whatever it is we already believe about the others, right? So
and reinforce for them about you being another.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that thinking it's not influential.
It's not influential. So what would be influential?
So yeah, how could we be influential?
How about empathy?
Oh, what's that?
Yeah. How about making an effort to understand someone's opposing view and how they feel, and taking that seriously, and and
this is going to be a real surprise to some people, but that even works when you're trying to discipline a child or a teenager. If you use emotion coaching, that's where you start. You start with empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we when we're doing counseling, we often do thought experiments with people. So we're looking at different ways of thinking about whatever the situation is. So I mean, just thinking about what you said earlier about standing in right field and, the national, I'm picturing that in my head. I'm feeling some of that. I felt that before. I think others have probably felt that before. We could also think of what's right or wrong, that we do live in a country that allows us to have different opinions.
Right.
And we should is probably a bad word, but we probably should be
it might be a good idea
putting that first, huh?
Yeah. Might be a good idea to focus on different people's experiences. And the thing that really made me think about that, and I've always kind of thought of myself as someone that's open and to all cultures, and accepting and tolerant of different differences. And I just thought of myself that way. And then when this came up, Drew Brees, quarterback for the Saints, said exactly what I felt. He said, I just don't think it's a good idea to, this is a time for me to really lift up in my mind the people that have gone before us and fought and things like that, and I want to honor them. And that's just, I just don't think it's a good time to to kneel and to do something different. It takes away from that. And his teammate stepped in and was really upset and did a really good job. I can't remember exactly who it was, but he said, my grandfather came back from the war and didn't get this acceptance and got a lot of hatred. And so I feel kind of some resentment and some hurt, some pain, that's connected to my heritage fighting for the country and not getting lifted up. That's my position. And what I want you to do is saying to him on this video, I want you to understand my side. This is not about your view. When we do the kneeling and all, it's not about you. This is about ours. And Drew Brees said, ooh, that I need to listen better. Maybe I just need to listen to the other side better. And so that model of, wow, I've got somebody that believes it has a different experience from me, and that it's not really an attack on mine. It's your expression is not really an attack on my way to celebrate. It's just an expression of their experience. And if I can understand the other side, and if they can try to understand my side, then we can kind of agree that, okay, let's not make a big deal of this, and say that you're right and I'm wrong. It's just we're different in the way we view it. And so the empathy part and the listening and the understanding, boy, we could use a lot more of that, for sure. To influence each other, influence each other.
We do. Yes. Whether we mean to or not.
Right.
The brain contextualizes, and we respond automatically.
Yeah.
So let's
if somebody's listening to me, somebody's listening and taking seriously what I have to say, then I'm going to listen to them too a little bit more. I'm going to maybe change my mind and be influenced to change my mind about maybe a point that they have that I might be missing because I'm so rooted in my experience and thinking that it's right and not recognizing it's just a value or whatever. So
do you think we can find a group of peers that actually the pressure is to listen and understand other people?
It's possible.
Does it sound exciting?
It does.
So what would be some cognitive behavioral strategies we might include if we're trying to deal with the peer influence that may be getting us into trouble even?
Yeah. Okay. Well, a lot of times we start off with a stress log where we would just write down what's triggering this upset feeling about something, and it may be some difference of opinion it's causing problems in relationships or things like that. So stress log would be able to kind of identify the event, the feeling, the thought, the level of distress, just to recognize the pattern. That's the first part of it, is being aware of the pattern, how you're thinking and feeling. And then the go far test, it's always good. Does thought help me meet my goal, get along with other people, feel like I want to feel, keep me alive? Based in reality, the based in reality really gets us to look at, is this reality? Is this truth? Or is this just value? It's opinion. Is this just the way things have been? Or is this, gives you a chance to really evaluate the thinking. And then the utility analysis. This is a good one where we take those thoughts and figure out how that influences feelings and how that influences behaviors. And ultimately, does it lead us to the outcome that we want? And if it doesn't, let's start with what outcome do we want that's better? Then backwards, how do we behave to make it more likely to get that outcome? What kind of feeling would be better than angry or anxious or some other feeling that maybe we don't want, that would influence us to have a more productive behavior? And then finally, how can we think in ways that makes us feel those feelings, helps us feel those feelings? So utility analysis are good strategies for really being able to decide what to do to go forward, and using our minds in this gap.
That's where it starts, isn't it?
Yeah.
To use our thinking. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is our
and
thinking,
the whole idea is get out of the because it really starts in the feeling, right?
It does.
Is being able to kind of recognize that feeling and step back and use the thinking to help us feel better and and respond in ways that are helpful.
Yeah, help us be more confident, and because we've actually thought about what is the outcome we're looking for, and we're determining which way of thinking is useful to get me to the outcome I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, because if we don't stop and think, most of the time we're just going to do what we've done before.
Yes.
And we're going to be influenced by people who may or may not have our values, our shared values. And we want to be able to make conscious decisions about that, rather than just do what we always do that may sometimes not be the most helpful thing.
Well, you've convinced me. I'm gonna work to get out of the automaticity of everyday living.
That's a good idea.
Start with being emotionally self-aware, fundamental to emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know for me, if it's hard, but if I am working at using empathy and thinking about the other person's side, I feel better and I behave better. If I don't feel good, and I can be kind of, not nice. Okay. Not the kind of person that I want to project and be to my human brothers and sisters. So it takes work, but it is worth it to me, because if it makes me, if I can feel better and be less angry and upset, and if I can get along with people better, that's well worth it.
It is, and there's evidence that you live a healthier life because there's less stress, and you have longevity.
Yeah, I want to enjoy my life while I'm still here. So anyway, that's the discussion on peer pressure, and got into a lot of different things there. But the idea is again to be aware of it, and to think about how we can use our minds to determine, how to think based on what we've experienced before, how we've been influenced by other people, how we can be influenced by other people that are different from us, and how we can influence other people in ways that are helpful.
I like it.
So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.